Yeah, I haven't been feeling that great, and I might stop making videos for a while, but I don't know. I've had a lot on my mind, and I'm going to at least probably make another, set or two of videos before I take a break. But, still trying to keep it mostly on the nostalgia shit. But, the 15-minute thing kind of gets annoying sometimes, especially when I'm on a roll. But whatever, I'll just sort of reiterate the end of the last one where I was talking about um there's a lot of these, so like wayback doesn't really work how people think it does, and I want to make that kind of its own whole video. But part of the issue is, you know, it's hard enough to preserve data in the first place. The way that it works, these sites don't really explain it that well, so they work differently than people think they do. But then there's also this sort of self-nuking thing. So part of my looking for this original 2006, trauma no tarot speed run of painkiller was it led me to the site of, I'm pretty sure it was RJ19's website, himself. But what I found on the video page, I mean, first of all, it didn't matter because they're all dead links. But it was showing how like different parts of the run had been updated. So apparently it was like an individual levels run. Now maybe it was different at that point. I forgot to check the date on the specific archive page, but what I remember originally was it was just like the full run as one video. Maybe my memories blended together with that and the one that officially got on SDA. I don't know, but SDA themselves do that. Now, part of what ameliorates that is that when SDA uploads stuff, they also upload the files to, Wayback Archive. However, they take it off the original page and they replace it with the new one. And they don't mention the name of the old one. They don't point to the old files. So sometimes they can be difficult to find. So for example, you might look at an archive of the game page, but there isn't an older one that points to those specific files. One of the speed runs I wanted to watch, because speed runs for me is, yeah, I like to see the fastest time, but a lot of the speed runs I watch because I want to watch one that mattered to me 20 years ago. Again, it's a nostalgia thing, escapism, whatever. But one of them, I can't remember what game it was. Maybe it was Serious Sam. But, I had to find a separate website, like an archive of a page off that website that pointed to that particular speed run, to get a link to the files to make it work or whatever it was that I did. So a big problem is that people just don't archive enough. Like a lot of these sites, and granted, they're 20 plus year ago obscure websites almost nobody heard of. They themselves might not have ever heard of Wayback, or these other, like archive.is and like shit like that. But a lot of the stuff will happen where they make updates to the page, but they're not really thinking about kind of preservation either exactly, necessarily. So they'll update and replace a file like I mentioned. And so like for an example, there used to be Quake Done Quick was like directly on SDA. And again, this is like 2006 era. They used to have a speed run of Quake that I don't remember the name of it now. All I remember is it had this German dude narrating over top of it, like from the perspective of Ranger. And then there was all this different, period contemporary music playing here and there throughout the video, mostly during load, chapter end screens or whatever. I looked and looked for the original page, like the original file, and I can't find it anywhere. Thankfully, there's an upload on YouTube, but as far as the problem is a lot of these videos. See, when you upload something to YouTube, they reprocess it, they re-encode it. Now a lot of shit now they're destroying with their frame rate conversion shit, making everything look terrible and fucking that up. But minimum they're recompressing the video, and that's going to make it look worse because that's just how lossy encoding works. by definition, there's a loss. And I mean, there is visual lossless codecs. There, you can use a lossy encoder, but like maximum bit rate essentially, and it kind of de facto uncompressed. But it just the way that they do it, there's going to be a noticeable difference for me anyway. And I just like the thing about having the original files. So like one of the things I like with SDA was that they hosted the links, the actual video encodes that they made. They had them on YouTube or like task videos, but you know usually you could get a full encode. Well, the problem is nowadays everything's hosted on Twitch, YouTube, whatever. But then there's a lot of shit like this where that old school painkiller video, speedrun that I'm thinking of, it might be on YouTube. I haven't found it yet, but it's for sure to be compressed to hell and back. I mean, I guess pun intended. But like, I really need to instill into anybody that hears this that if you're going to archive something on wayback or archive.is or like whatever, that you need to make sure that you also separately archive any links, like recursively, right? Like that, the web page that points to another page on the website. And, it's like, think about it and make sure to archive everything relevant to that whole, trail of clicking or whatever to get to whatever anybody's looking for. Because so many times I've seen where they archive the page, but the archive is just a bunch of links that might have been direct hosted at a time. And, well, but now they're gone forever because somebody backed them up, right? And another thing I would say is not to fully rely on our, wayback or whatever either. Because not only do you need to make sure to archive, like explicitly archive everything that wayback will let you, but sometimes it's actually better. Like, so for an example, there's spot blogs from over 20 years ago. That's used to be how I downloaded music. Well, a lot of them are still up, but it doesn't matter because they're linking to mega upload and rapid share, right? Not mega upload, right? And so the shit is just gone forever. You'll never get it unless you find somebody else that re-uploaded it or this or that. Some things I've noticed are like several games. There was a dude on ModDB. I found that he was actually making ModDB pages specifically to back up different shit that's hard to find, and I appreciate that. And so another aspect of that is don't think so much just about using an archive site. Really think about doing local archives of shit. And if you're going to re-upload it to other websites, other upload sites, just keep in mind that those probably won't be around forever either. So for an example, I screwed up. There used to be a ton of shit I had that I'll never have again because I uploaded them to a defunct website. It was like pof.cat or like whatever the fuck it is, some, weeb site. Well, the shit's gone forever. Now there's supposedly archives of that website and you can search for files off of that. Well, every file so at the time that I used it, I saved all the links in a text editor. So I have what the fuck the original link is. None of them work. It doesn't have anything of mine on there. Because there's some shit I really wish I could have back. I mean, that's the case with there's a lot of shit loss, some shit I deleted on purpose and wish I didn't, this thing, how the shit goes. But, you should really think about making local backups, like literally saving the page to your own, computer, as well as the media off the page, so it actually looks correct when it loads and all that. And because someday, wayback might not even be around. It can't last forever. It's impossible. Nothing does. But I thought it was interesting to see, like, the sort of lack of forethought on that, where, like, RJ19 or whoever it was, or maybe it was that David Extreme guy, or there's a lot of old names in Painkiller that every time I see them, they stand out to me. But one of them made a website, and they actually said that explicitly. Oh, the Dreamcatcher forums went down with no warning, so we made our new forum, and then you follow the way back. You're looking at the archive page of that saying that, and then you follow the link to that, and it's dead too, right? It doesn't exist anymore, and also a lot of times with shit like that, there's not even an archive of that, and there's just been so much shit like that from back in the day, and supposedly shit's on the internet forever. But as far as I can tell, no. There's certain files that I might be the only one that still has a copy of it. Occasionally, you'll see it pop up here and there, but these hard to find files, and the harder they make it to use the internet in the first fucking place, you know, finding this obscure shit can be pretty difficult. And I'm not going on fucking Discord or any of these other fucking chomo fucking programs. I'm just not doing it. And I miss the days of one of those sites. I forget the exact name, but I remember it from back in the day. In fact, the way back I was looking at it was 2004. It's some old painkiller forum, and that old BB code forum type of style. I love shit like that. And that's the way the shit should have been. That's the way it should have stayed. It should have never been anything else. But I've even seen some revisionist bullshit with painkiller, right? One of the websites of the archive of it was saying on there how they updated the website, and if you don't like it, fuck you, I guess. You're a piece of shit for wanting to preserve stuff, right? Someday you won't be able to play vanilla Stalker Shadow Chernobyl. That's another game I might, try to mess with again. Now, Painkiller works just barely enough. Like, I actually even, beat Lucifer on Trauma. Or, well, I guess technically Nightmare, I think. I don't know. I thought I had 100% save of Trauma with everything unlocked. But I think I didn't copy the Lua script or whatever it is to put the levels in. I don't know. It's Nightmare instead of Trauma like it should be. I don't know why, but whatever. I've done it before. Lucifer is actually way easier than Alistor, but even as bad as the being able to even do anything, like Demon Morph mode is like the worst because you can fire one or two shots every second or two. It's really slow. So timing it with Lucifer's stupid meteor shower thing is like the first time I tried, I actually died, and I can't remember the last time I died on fucking Lucifer. But I was actually able to do that. I mean, probably sure as fuck. I mean, King Alistor in Battle Out of Hell is the easiest because you know you don't even really have to do anything in that fight. But I don't know. Anyway, at least I can get it to work. Shadow Chernobyl probably still works. I mess with it here or there, but I've been feeling in the mood. But Painkiller fucking with me. I wonder if that'll work. But I mean, there's going to be a day probably where like how Painkiller wanted to like delist. They wanted to fuck you over with H&D, and then now they're making some fucking remake and apparently delisted shit with it. You know, um, Stalker, they tried to whitewash Shadow Chernobyl, taking out the Soviet stuff, and like their, the definitive edition or whatever the fuck they call it, that, it's the revisionist edition. It's like, dude, nobody thinks you're co-signing the Soviet Union or Russian Federation just because there's some hammer and sickles on period contemporary. It's like, dude, the buildings were dilapidated when the game was fucking made, right? But like, there's going to be some day where all this data is going to be gone. Disk drives won't work. So even if you have a Half-Life 2 or Stalker sock like I do on disk, how are you going to do anything with them, right? Sort of like, as I mentioned before, who the fuck has floppy disks? And then Wayback will go to. Someday these games will just literally not be playable anymore. And I hate that idea. But, the operating systems force updates on you, the Steam forces updates, and, now these sites don't want Wayback archiving it because of some shit that's nothing to do with any of us, right? They want to punish us for a bunch of LLM chatbot shit. But whatever, just preserve what you can while you can.